right, so today we're doing a basics training. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to walk through some of the foundational elements of Materio together and start to look at what it's like to set up your project in Materio, go over some of the framework and why that is important to kind of understand and know so that we can start to make our work more efficient. So, all right, can everyone see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? All right, got a thumbs up. Okay, so I'm going to minimize you guys. If you have any questions while we're going through this, drop it in the chat. Lindsay is here. She's our process and procurement specialist, and she will field those, and then we can have some time at the end for Q&A. Okay. All right, so what we're looking at here is a Materio project. I'll actually step back for a second and look at our dashboard. So when we come into Materio, this is the kind of the place that you're going to land. This is where all your projects live, whether that is your active projects or archive projects, some of your high-level to-dos across projects. And so this is just a place for you to find your information. All right, now after we go inside of a project here, you'll see that on the right-hand side, I have some visuals. This is a board that I've created in Materio. I have my drawing set uploaded in here. I do have a stack of drawings, which is sort of like a folder where I can store information or sort of group things. And this is going to be a great way for you to keep your drawings here so that everyone on your team, any collaborators you're working with or have invited in, or even your client can see what is happening on a project. Now, speaking of clients, you can also come in and, of course, hide information from your clients. So if you're storing certain pages that you don't want them to see or certain archived, drawing sets or boards, you can also turn those off. But this is a great place to sort of collaborate on the drawing set, and that is front and center in a Materio project. And then on the left over here, we're going to build our scope of work together. But before we do that, I just want to highlight some of the key things that I love early on in a project. And one of those is actually communication on the floor plans. The reason I think this is great to know when you're just getting started in Materio is that you may have a project where you're in those initial phases of doing drawings and trying to get feedback, whether it's with an architect you're working with, whether it's from your client. You can always come in and communicate directly on the plans and sort of leave that feedback there. So I think that is just a good place to know that it's there, and we'll cover some communication in other places of the system later. And then quickly, I'll show you a project that has a more built out project where we can see some statuses and information. So as we start to build out our project and we get further down the line, since we're not going to get to that today, I just want you to see how the items in your scope have statuses like received, right, or approved, or this one has shipped. And so we can see certain information about that product or that item right here in our scope of work. And we can also see that over in our approved selection space. And this is a great place, again, for client communication, for them to know where things are at on the project. That's all here. So since we're going to focus on the early stages of a project today, I just wanted to highlight kind of what this might look like in a more full state. We're going to hop back over to our basics project, and we are going to get started. Okay. All right, so in Materio, when we're building on a scope of work, we want to think about two things. That's category and location. So everything in Materio should have a category. And you can think about this sort of as the trade category or the work to be done. This is going to be very helpful later down the line when we want to get our material schedules out the door, or we want to hand off parts of our project to collaborators. So in this case, I'm just going to do first my design services. I'm also going to do electrical, tile, and cabinetry. We're going to do just a very slim example of a project today. And then what I want to do here is also go ahead and create my items. So we're going to go over a few different item types. The first one being design services. So really, before we even start to spell out what is going into this project, we're going to first outline what our design services are going to be, and we're going to get that agreed upon with our client. So here I'm going to do my design fee. Now, of course, I'm just keeping this generic, but you may do this by phase. You may do this only hourly. You may just put design fee and do a flat rate. All of those are possible here in Materio. But the one thing I do want to call out is that this is labor. So we have 4 different item types: material, shipping, labor, and delivery. So this is labor, and it's also not a selection. So we'll go through selections, but selections are things that you can get approved and kind of go through an official order process. In this case, this is not a selection, it's just a service. So we're going to hit save, or you can hit enter. And then here we're going to actually go into estimating what this is going to cost. So I can type in here my fee. So maybe that's $10,000. And then this should be the cost of you to do the work. And then of course you want to project here, your markup on that, which would be essentially your billable rate. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter there. And I'll also show you what it looks like to do design hourly. Let's say we're doing project management actually, and we want to do that hourly. I love that when I'm adding an item, Materio is already remembering the last thing I did was labor and it was not a selection. So that's nice that I don't have to do that again. I'm going to hit enter. And then in this case, I'm going to put in my hourly rate here. Again, you can choose to do markup or not. We can also just leave that off for now. And then I'm going to hit the existing quantity of 1, and I'm going to type in my estimated amount of hours, and I'm going to change the unit to hours instead of units. So now I have 100 hours of project management at $100 an hour. Okay, so we've got our design services in there. Again, those are just 2 examples. One thing I do want to call out is that since this is labor, it's going to say automatically that it's unassigned. In this case, I can just say this is self-performed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. All right. And then now we're going to move on to adding a few different items. I did want to call out actually before we add the items, you can view your scope of work by location. And oftentimes as designers, that might be how we're thinking. So I'm going to go ahead and just add in bathroom here as a location. And then I'm going to actually add in items to the bathroom. And so you can do this either way, and I'll show you how when I go to add this, so let's say I'm adding in a sconce in the bathroom, you can see that it's defaulting to design services, but I'm actually going to go ahead and hit electrical. And this is a material, and this is a selection. So I want to turn that back on. And when I hit enter, you'll see that this now has a little question mark, a place for a photo to go. That indicates to me that this is a selection item, meaning I'm going to eventually pull product in, get that approved by my clients, go through a presentation and approval process with them, and then that's going to go through the order flow and all of that good stuff. So you can see that I've got options needed here, and this is a selection. Now, I do want to talk about budgeting as well. We'll kind of go one at a time here. Let's just say that generally I'm expecting the sconce is going to cost me $500. When you are doing a selection, it is important to make sure that you have your markup in there. But at this moment, this is really an estimated markup. This is me thinking ahead about how much I want to make on this and how much I need to profit on this. And also, you may have a few vendors that you work with and you have a general sort of sense of what that markup is that you can usually offer on certain categories of work. In this case, I'm going to mark it up 100%, and then the tax is listed here as well. So that is something that you can do per item. And then I also wanted to call out at the top of your scope of work, there's this little gear icon, and here you can edit your default rates. This is important to do early on in your project so that you can not have to do this per item. So for materials, I have a default of 50% in tax, shipping. I'm actually going to change that to 20 with tax. Delivery, I'm going to do 20. And then also with labor, I'm going to do 20. So I'm actually going to lower my markup. And then in my case, I'm not going to have tax on my labor. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. That will help me be successful when I go through adding new items. Those defaults will be there on those different item types. All right. So now that I have a budget set for my sconce, and I have an item here for my sconce, we're going to actually look at our floor plan, and we're actually going to draw out or mark with the plan markers what we where we think these are going to go so that we can kind of identify a quick quantity at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the existing quantity and hit mark plans. And then in Materio, we have 4 different types of markers. And in this case, I'm going to start with just the point marker. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to have a sconce here and a sconce here. Now these markers look pretty large to me, so I'm actually going to adjust the size on these and make these smaller. And so you'll see that when I add those 2 points, right, I'm holding the space bar to zoom in, to show you guys, because it's zoomed out. Materio is quantifying 2 units for me. Because I put 2 markers, it's now saying that I have 2 sconces. And when I hit save, it's also doing that math for me. So that's really the benefit of utilizing, or really one of the benefits of utilizing the markers early on, is that you can get an idea, even if the design changes later, of what it might really cost you to do this project and sort of in the direction that you're thinking. So I've got my electrical in there. Now, next, what I want to do is actually add in floor tile. And again, this is not electrical. This is going to be tile. It's a material and a selection. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to go through setting my usual price for this item. Again, my defaults are there. That's great. And I'm going to mark the plan. So I want to show you this because I want to show you the 4 different kinds of markers we have. So one is the area. And so what I'm going to do here is just drag this rectangle or this box here to fit the floor tile. And you'll see that it says I have 25 or 26.52 square feet. I can also add in my waste factor here, and I can hit save. Now, Materio knows the dimensions here because when you first upload your plan set and you first go to mark an item, it's going to ask you to set the scale for that. But I will actually show you also how you can set that scale. And to show you the Polygon tool, I'm going to move over here to the foyer really quick and add in a flooring item. And we're going to put this into flooring and hit save. Okay. And one thing I'm not showing off today is our kits. That's because I want to keep it in the basics, the sort of foundations, but I do invite you to explore kits if you intend to be on that middle tier and above. That can help building out these rooms and these items really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in an estimate here, and then we're going to mark this. I just want to show you the Polygon tool and also how you will set the scale. So in this case, I've already set the scale, but when you first do this, you're going to get a big yellow box right here on the left, and you're going to get the same, you're going to hit set scale. And when I hit change scale, it's going to be the same mechanism. So then we're going to drag it to a space where we know the dimensions, and we're going to put this in. So we're going to drag here, and this is actually 10 foot and 5.5 inches. And we're going to save this as the project default for now. I typically start with that. If I then go in and start uploading additional elevations or other pages that have different scales, you can always set the scale per page. So now my scale is set, and I'm going to go ahead and use our Polygon tool. You just click, you can hold shift to create a straight line. And I'm actually going to go around these walls and close that shape. You can always come back in and adjust. You can also add new points if you needed to insert new points. So just know that that is there. And then I'm going to enter my waste and hit save. Okay, so we've done our polygon marker, our area marker, we've done our point marker. Now I'm also going to show you the linear foot marker. So let's say that in the bathroom, we are doing cabinetry. So we're going to go ahead and select cabinetry here, and we're going to do custom vanity. And we're going to hit save. And now what I want to do is actually say, okay, this is actually going to be $750 per linear foot. In this case, we'll leave our markup there for now. I'm going to use our linear marker here, our line marker, and go across and hit save and hit enter. And then one thing I'm not going to do for my vanity, but I'll just show so we don't have to do another marker, is if I'm in the early budgeting phases, and let's say I was doing it the shower wall over here, but I don't have elevations yet, I can actually go up in height with the linear marker. And so that is something that you can also do early on. And so I'm just going to hit save on that one. So now I have, pretty quickly, a really solid understanding of what is starting to go into this bathroom. I can also see these markers, which will be great for handoff and for communication and for understanding where things are later. So I definitely invite you to further explore using the markers. Designers and teams get really creative with how they use them. Sometimes they're drawing out furniture with them. You can also, of course, I guess I should say this as well, if you really want to get creative with this, you can use these markers, and then you can always change the unit. So let's say I was actually highlighting a sectional with an area marker. I could always just come in and change this to one unit if I wanted to. So just know that that is a possibility if you wanted to use those markers in more creative ways. Okay, So now we're going to go through what it looks like to add product to these. And also I want to call out before we talk about adding product, the benefit of setting up your contacts correctly in Materio, because that's going to help you in really huge ways when you start to use our Chrome extension, our selections clipper. So if we head over to our main menu on the top left here, and we go to our contacts, in our contacts here, you can see that you have your collaborators, your subcontractors, and vendors. And I just wanted to show what this looks like to, let me find my contact here. So I'm going to edit this. You can see that on this or on this vendor contact here, you do have an option to turn on that you have a trade account, and you can put in your account number. You can put in your standard trade discount with that vendor, and you can also put in your standard markup. So this is connected to the contact so that when I go and clip, Materio is going to pull up those standard discounts and markups that I've added in with the contact. So absolutely, when you're getting started in Materio, I would say make sure when you come here, you can use this import function at the top right to bring in your vendors all at once. And there will be columns for you to add in information like your standard discount and like your markup. And that's going to make it really, really helpful, really easy when you go to clip. And it makes it so that anyone on your team can clip and they're not having to reference back to a spreadsheet or some sort of system where you've got that discount documented. So that is really helpful to know and sort of do early on in the project. Now, when it comes to adding products to your project, over here on the left, we've got a navigation over here on the left. I want to highlight selections, which is the third one down. This is an area where all of the items in your scope of work that have been highlighted as selections will show up. This is going to give you sort of the budget that you've set for these items. It's going to break them down by room. Naturally, you can, of course, also switch to view it by category. So if you're like, hey, today I'm working on all the electrical, that's totally fine. You can do that. But the default here is going to be location. And this is a way for you to start to pull product in on top of those items into Materio. Now you can do this from the scope of work. I personally like to come here because it's a bit of a visual space for me to work. So I'm going to start to pull in items from my library. And so when we talk about clipping, this is where it's going to come from. And in fact, let's go ahead and we'll pull a sconce in, but then I also want to go back over here to the clipper really quick and show you what I was talking about. So this is just an example of the clipper. When you come into the clipper, you can pull this into certain areas of your library or directly to your project. You can pull images, and Materio is going to do its best job to pull in this information, actually, depending on the website. You can see for the client-facing name, it actually brought in the exact product name. So I actually might want to just rename this for my client. It's going to pull in SKU. I can add in different notes. But what I really wanted to highlight is that because I'm clipping on a website that I have a contact associated with, it actually is already pulling in my trade discount and already pulling in my markup here. And I can also come in and decide to, add my shipping, whatever it might be, and add a markup on my shipping. And it's going to give you a really clear understanding of what the client total price is. And then also, I wanted to call out that you can go ahead and bring in things like install guides from the clipper, so that if this is the sconce that is approved, and if we hand this off to our electrician down the line, that information is already there. So I'm going to save that clip or that item, and then it's going to come over here, and I'm actually going to add it in as a second option on my sconces. On my sconce item. So now you can see that I have two options. These are very different. So in the earlier stages of your project, where you're sort of starting to conceptualize what goes into a project, and maybe you're just pulling options, you can definitely do that here. You can definitely sort of bring in things, but we do want to make sure that when we're clipping, we're looking for the information that we need to actually execute on this item and in this project. So bringing in install guides, making sure we have bulb information and wattage and things that we need to know here is very important. You take clipping very seriously here at Materio. All right, so we've got our sconces in, and again, I'm just going to pull in a few examples so that I can show you what this looks like as we start to go further into the process. I should note that your design library is something that is built out by your team. this is something that you kind of build out globally, and all of these can be used across projects. It is important, I think, in the early stages to think about how you want to organize the library. We do have our standard categories here, but you may want to create subgroups, and you may want to agree on those early on and think about how your team wants to sort of organize those. So I've brought in some floor tile, and in this case, for the vanity, this would actually be a great reason to do multi-component options. So let me see if I have one in here. Here's an example. This is custom cabinets. I'll pull this in as a great example to what can be done with the components. But here you can see that this is custom cabinets. What I have here are 3 components. I have the cabinet type, the base, I have the color that I want, and I have the hardware that I want for it. And so this is one that's already been sort of built out, but this is a way for you to get client approval in one go. So if you didn't want to give your clients, different options for hardware, but you wanted to say with the blue, I'm suggesting this matte black handle, then you could put it together in a package. But components are a way for clients to approve things in one go, and I'll go into building one of those in just a moment. So we've got our products here. And I did want to call out that with Materio, now that we're back in our scope of work, we can see these options very clearly as we start to build them out. Let's go ahead and play with adding in a component item. So I'm going to just add it to the foyer. This is going to be a kind of a silly example for the foyer, but we're going to say that we're doing a custom pillow in the foyer. Of course, this is what we'll call a soft good. It's material and it's a selection, so that's great. Now, what I want to do here, when I'm thinking about component items, is when I click the number here, the orange to estimate, I want to just click add multiple components. And when I do that, you'll see that Materio expands this item for me. And this is where I'm going to start to put in what is behind the scenes of this custom pillow. So we might have our insert, we're going to have our fabric, we're going to have, maybe we have, a trim or tassels. Maybe we have our workroom labor, right? So we're starting to add what it's going to take to actually execute this. And I'm actually going to put this one as labor, hit save. And then further than that, I can actually use items in my library to estimate what this is going to cost me. So I'm going to insert this pillow insert, and you can see, because when I had that insert in my library, I pulled shipping for it, it's also going to pull in that for me. So we're looking at the total cost of what it's going to take. Maybe I want to pull in this fabric. Maybe I want to pull in these tassels here. And also, what I'm trying to also communicate with this component item is how much of this item is needed for one pillow. So maybe this comes in a package of a certain number, and I actually only need, 0.25 of this total to make it happen for one pillow. And so I can kind of start to say what that's going to cost. And then again, I can also assign my workroom labor here, and I can say, well, every time I do a pillow with Jane, it's $100. And so I've got my markup on there, and it's all there. So now I can see that it's going to cost me my client about $371 for this pillow. And let's say actually I want 4 of these pillows. Again, it's multiplying, it's doing all that math. So that is me sort of spelling out what's needed in a component item. And then when I actually go to create an option for this, I'm going to do a new multi-component option. Those placeholders that I put in will show up as the default. But if I want to opt out of those, maybe I want to pick a different fabric, maybe I want it to be this fabric, I could do that. And it's going to fill in the different images at the top. I can customize what images I want my client to see. And then I can, of course, name this, the space pillow, and I can have an internal name and all of that. So I can go ahead and save that. And I can choose to add it to my library if I want, if I think I might reuse this. And then I can also pull in from my library previous component items. So here's a custom berry pillow that I created, which has 7 components. But I've got a nice little rendered photo there. So I can also pull that in as well. So you can save component items to your library and then quickly pull those on as options as well. And then I also want to just highlight the really cool part about having something like this that's custom is you can also then kind of juxtapose that against something that's not custom. So maybe this pillow we'll do this one, is right off the shelf, right? This is ready to ship. It's not custom. you might be able to see, a difference in buying 4 of those versus buying 4, custom pillows. So I love that you can kind of present those options to your client in a way so they can kind of have that as a decision if necessary. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to call out about, starting to run your selections through Materio is that once we're ready to send this over to our client, we will go through the review process. And so Materio really facilitates this. I'm not going to get into design proposals today, but I know you probably see that up there and you're curious about that. That is about to be in early access and is really exciting. We're going to be doing some presentations, and it's just great. So we're going to go ahead and hit send for now on these. If you've got hundreds of items up here, you can always filter down by which rooms or categories you want to send. And then one thing I also love is that Materio is letting me know that I'm missing markup on some products. Now, that's probably because I've had Materio for a long time and I've missed some things. But before we hit send, this is a great example of how we can use our scope table. So if we head to the view of our scope in this table format, I want to filter down by any markup that is equal to 0. And what this is going to do is bring up all the items that have no markup on it. And I can just change that. I can just say, okay, you know what? I want 50% markup on this, 50 on this, and on these items, I want to have markup as well. So this is a quick way for me to spell out what I need to add markup to. So I'm going to save these changes. And so I can do that right here without having to go back into each item. It gives me the ability to really filter down by, okay, what's left at 0? What am I not including? What do I need to edit? And that makes it super fast to make those changes. So I'm going to head back to my selections and go ahead and send these over. I don't think I fixed all of them, but that's okay. You can also send these over. Some firms don't use markup. Materio is going to warn you because we're doing our best job to keep you profitable and make sure that you are, doing your job correctly to make that money. We're going to go ahead and just ignore it. In this case, it's going to move over to client review. This is when your client's going to get an email. They're going to be asked to come in and approve things. They do have a client portal. This is really important and clients actually love the client portal. But this gives them the opportunity to come in, communicate with you on items. They can actually have conversations with you on product and can ask questions. They can come in and make approvals and all that. So I'm gonna actually view this as a client so we can see. We're gonna go right here and then we're gonna go ahead and just hit approve on some things. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit approve. And again, you can see they're not seeing backend information. They're not seeing attachments. They're not seeing even pricing. In this case, I think I have it turned off for them, but they can come in and make decisions. So I'm gonna exit out of that. And then I wanted to call out, we'll actually do one component item as well. That once that's done and your client has approved, this is going to land in the approved section. And this is where you can see any item that has components, items that don't, what the status of them is at. And this is actually going to auto draft purchase orders into your order space. So all of those backend pieces of those pillows will be auto drafted as a purchase order. This is by vendor. So if you have 20 items from one vendor, they will all show up here under this one PO. Here's the 20 items you need to order, and you can always customize that. We don't have a ton of time for orders today, but I definitely invite you to check that out because it is one of the best parts of our system, in my opinion, and makes life a lot easier. So before we even get into orders, we would typically want to go ahead and collect a deposit on the items that we have approved. I will highlight, once we head over to finances and invoicing, you can see here that I have a design fee retainer that is paid, and I have 40,000 of that available. So this is what I would use to then make payments or apply payment to my design fees, and then also, you can collect retainers for FF&E. It doesn't have to just be for services, but that is sort of one of the initial parts of setting up with a client. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and collect a deposit for the items that are approved. Now, one thing I will also highlight is that anything in Materio is you can bill for. So anything that has a dollar amount that is estimated, like this flooring or your design fees, those can be billed through our invoicing and billing section, which makes sure that everything you've scoped is eventually paid for, which I love. So I'm going to filter down by approved, and I'm just going to add these 3 items. I'm going to hit next. And in this case, you can choose to collect 100% or you can choose to collect 50, whatever percentage you want to collect. I'm going to go ahead and collect 100. I'm going to add this to my deposit. If there is an approved item, you'll see photos here, right? And then you can title this, I think titled FF&E deposit. You may do this by room. You can format these by room. So I could say, okay, I want to view this by location. Here's what's in the bathroom. Here's what's in the foyer. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and send that over. I can put my legal terms here to feel secure in my payment and making sure they understand what this covers. And then also we do have something called Materio Pay. So you can choose to use that for fast and secure online payments. You can choose whether you want to offer card or ACH and whether you include the total of the platform fees for your client or if you want to cover those as a firm. So I can go ahead and hit send and I'm going to send that over. And then quickly, I'm just going to apply payment. We'll pretend that they wrote us a check and we're going to come in and document that here. What I want to show you is kind of what I showed you earlier in that Fuller project, but call out specifically is that now we can see that these items are fully paid. So now if something changes, like we had to add white glove delivery or the shipping increased, we can always choose to push that onto the client and push that onto the item, and Materio is going to track whether that's been billed or not. Okay, I do want to take a minute to pause there. We've obviously not gotten into timeline, and we haven't even gotten into orders, but I wanted to check in and see if there were any important questions that we had. Usually we do about 30 minutes and then we open up for FAQ. So are there any questions that have come in, Lindsay, that you want to ask that I can answer?
I would actually, the question I get is, you were right almost there with the purchase orders. Could you show us how to push changes in cost to a client?
Sure, great. All right, so we're going to go through a little bit of ordering since we do have time. So we're going to hit one of these items. Let's go ahead and just open this up. Let's say that we have, we're going to go order this online in this case. I'm going to say that I have the receipt. I'm going to go ahead and upload that receipt here. Now, this is just going to be an example. So use our imaginations here. We're going to just drop this in. We've got a receipt. We can screenshot that from on the website or get the PDF and drop it in here. What we're doing in this moment is not just placing an order and tracking that we've placed an order, but we have to remember this is an expense tracking mechanism, right? We need to make sure that the firm knows what we've actually paid and how much and what it's allotted to. So in this case, I'm looking to make sure it matches. If anything over here on the left, like the unit price needs to change, like the shipping, let's say we actually got $100 additional shipping here we didn't plan for, we need to document that. Now I'm going to hit confirm. And I'm also going to go ahead and record payment in this moment. Now, because we are integrated with QuickBooks and I have my QuickBooks turned on, I can also choose the purchasing method that I use, which is going to be really helpful for auto reconciling on the QuickBooks side. So I'm going to document that payment. Now, before I move forward, I actually want to hit this client pricing button at the bottom here. And you can see that because I added $100 of shipping, Materio is highlighting that for me right here, saying that it's a new cost and that it has gone up. I can choose if I want to absorb that cost, if I want to pass on that cost to my client, or if I want to partially absorb it, right? In this case, I'm going to pass it on because I have it in my contract that, when shipping changes and possibly increases, I pass that on. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close, and then I'm going to hit save. Now, while we're over here in the orders workflow, I want to call out that what we're trying to do in being a full project delivery system is bringing the work to you. So rather than you now having to go update a spreadsheet, right, to note that something is ordered, we know that you just tracked an order and we're going to ask you, hey, do you want to get this ordered? Or do you want to label this as ordered? Yes. So Materio's taking the initiative there to update that item for you. And then if we head over to our selections, we'll now see that this tile is updated to ordered and is now only partially paid 72%. And that's because we added that shipping on. So again, when we go to collect payment next time and we come to open, let's say do the final invoice, and we add in our scope here, we're going to add in those items again, and you'll see that this one is missing some, right? We don't have that one all the way shored up. We're going to shore that one all the way up and add it to the invoice. And in this case, we'd just be collecting the balance due on that. That deposit payment is going to be auto applied. We're going to send this over to our client for the remainder of that balance. So hopefully that answers the question. Is there anything else specific around procurement that you would like for me to call out?
I think that's good for now. I do have one question. When
Mhm.
and I'm not sure that we should tackle this here now, but this is a question I get. When QuickBooks isn't syncing,
Mhm.
how do I determine what is wrong?
Sure. That's a great question. So I think typically when something is not syncing over to QuickBooks, like a purchase order, right? Something over here, there's a few reasons that might happen. One might be that you actually don't have the tier of QuickBooks that works with purchase orders and that you don't have it turned on over here in your QuickBooks settings. So this, if that's not happening, let's say with purchase orders, and this is not on, that's because you don't have that tier. There's I'm not honestly like I don't have the depth of knowledge to fix every QuickBooks thing. I think we have a great support center for that and great support team. So I would say if you're ever experiencing anything that's not syncing, first make sure you actually have it turned on and you're connected. And then if it's something that where, maybe it's an invoice and something is out of sync, it's possible that potentially you did something on the QuickBooks side, but I think that'd be something I would recommend reaching out to our support team. You can always access them down here at the bottom right of your dashboard using this live chat from 9 to 5 Central. So I'd say reach out there. And then, of course, in your QuickBooks settings area here, we also have a ton of articles to learn more and even videos within those articles to learn about why something might not be syncing.
And I think too, like a great starting point is actually usually if there's something, well, always if there's something not syncing with QuickBooks, you're going to get a little hazard symbol where you normally
Yes.
would see a green check. And if you just click on that, it will actually tell you what to look for. It will tell you what the problem is.
Yes. Well, great. You knew the answer, Lindsay. So I feel like I don't have one of those hazard symbols. And honestly, I don't run into them that often. So I think it's hard for me to know. But that's an absolutely great point that we're going to tell you if something is not syncing. So I should call out that right here, this says up to date, and there's a link. You can even open it in QuickBooks. Obviously, you have to be logged into your QuickBooks. So, let's say there's someone on your team that can see this, but they don't have access to QuickBooks. That's totally safe and fine. They will not be able to just magically open your QuickBooks. You have to be logged in, but that is an easy link to that over in QuickBooks. So if there is a caution symbol, it should give you information like Lindsay just said, and at least we're indicating to you that something is not syncing. So just know that we're going to try to do our best to let you know if anything like that is going on, and then you'd reach out to support if that info doesn't give you what you need. Um, Okay, I didn't cover anything about like boards or building product boards or presentation boards or anything like that because I feel like that's sort of getting down the line. But I think one thing that is good to know early on in a project is just that you can come in and start to build boards and you can start to drop images in or add products from your library if you want to just start to build something out, right? You can do that in here. And then even now, you can choose to scope this. You can actually add this to scope of work or create it. You can start from the earlier stages of throwing ideas together and then later go back and actually add this into uh, an item that exists or create a new item. So I love that. That's actually sort of new here is that you used to be able to definitely go all the way to the end and build boards, and now you can even start from the beginning and start to throw together designs and sort of get those ideas out of your mind early on, and later you can go back and scope that if needed. So I just wanted to call that out. We do have, full tutorials on boards and how you can use them, how to add text and all of that good stuff as well on our YouTube channel. So I definitely check that out. All right, any other questions that we got in the chat, Lindsay, that you would like for me to cover before we hop off today?
One question in the chat is you were showing the markers
Mm-hmm.
and you used flooring markers and
Mm-hmm.
then you had a lighting overlay. Is there a way to turn off or on certain layers so that you're only looking at certain things or so that it doesn't get so busy?
Yes. So once you start to add lots of markers, that's a great question. You're going to want to go, okay, I need to, hide some of these things. That's great. Up here at the top of this kind of toolbar on your plan set, you can see there is a layers button at the top. You can hide all of them. You can turn on specific ones. You can turn on a few at a time. So know that that is there for you if you're wanting to turn them off. And then also, I didn't cover this, but I should say this is like a really key thing and something that designers really love about the platform is that when we're ready to get this information out of the system, right, this is later down the line, we can actually come over and create view only links. Um, And so this is an example of one that was created. We'll just create a new one here. You can choose which plan pages you want the electrician, let's say, to see. So we can add those in. We can name this whatever we want, and we can choose which categories of work we want to show in which locations. Typically with electrical, we'd say, all electrical, all locations, certain pages, and then hit save. And then we can copy this code. We could email it or text it, but better yet, we can also print a QR code that's going to say very clearly electrical. This was the date that it was printed. This is the firm name. And then this is where it's going to take your team when they see that. They're going to go to whatever you share with them, whether it's boards, whether it's the plan pages here. And so with this one, we've got these 2 items. Usually you'll have lots more where they can actually hover over the plan, click on the information, see images, see if there are files there, right? See that information in this view when they don't have to log in. So this gives them access to your material schedules in a live way, where if you update, right, if we start adding items or more things are approved, we are going to populate it in this link. So that's one way. And the other is simply actually printing out your selections, choosing what you want to show. So let's say you're a designer who's handing off a bunch of things you've spec'd to a builder and the builder's actually going to order it. You would choose to show your vendor information, show the prices. Maybe you're doing everything on the project, and we would just hit print, and it's going to create this PDF for you. It's going to be, it's got your logo on the top. It's got the name of the project. If you've chosen to show vendor information, it even has links. If you sent them this PDF digitally, they would be able to click on those links and find where you want them to place orders. It's also great if you're trying to look at the status of everything. You can filter down by, hey, what's ordered, what's received. You can kind of use that. It's got all the specs. But that's another view. A lot of designers are spending manual time. You guys are spending manual time, right, making these spreadsheets. This is going to replace that. This is going to make sure that everything is organized, and then you can get it out of the system in the slices that you need to get it out of, and you can hand it off as needed. So I think that's really important to know. We also have videos on material schedules and view-only links on our YouTube channel, so you can definitely check those out if you're interested in that. And then another big thing I didn't talk about today, which I think is really a big part of invoicing, especially in Materio, and really understanding the work that you're doing, is making sure that even if you're flat fee, you're tracking your time. And if you are doing certain parts of your project hourly, that your team is tracking your time, because you can easily just drop those onto an invoice. So we do have a video on our YouTube channel by the wonderful Lindsay here today who goes over time tracking and billing for that time. So if you're someone who is tracking your time and billing for your time especially, check that out and make sure that you consider that as something that you can also integrate into Materio. Okay, I think we're up on time. Is there anything else urgent before we hop off today?
That was all the questions that I got.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. This was fantastic. I'm excited that you're here, that you're learning about Materio. There's lots of great reasons to do this. I think the biggest one that I've sort of realized lately is you can spend money and pay your team to move between all these tools, but your clients don't want to pay for that work. And really, you don't want to pay for that work. That's not a good use of valuable time. So let's make sure that we're using a tool that brings it all together, really starts to give us the work when we need it, where we need it, and kicks off next steps for us. So I'm just starting to think about Materio in that way more than ever. And as I get feedback from designers, I think that's the biggest part for me that I'm just sort of excited about right now. It's like every week there's something new and exciting, but that's where I'm at today. So thanks for joining us. We will send out a recording of this afterwards, and we hope to see you all around in the community. Thanks.